Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review, and check out my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to the Pray for Micah podcast. And now your host, Micah Chrisman.
Hello, welcome to the Pray for Micah podcast, where we explore art, activism, spirituality, and our cosmic significance. Yes. / insignificance.
Yes.
Got to have that half cup full, half cup empty perspective, of the world. No,
Duality.
I'm here with Ingrid B, and we're excited to have her here on the show, and we'll get more into sharing a little bit what she's all about as a local creative here in Kansas City. But first, I wanted to start off with a little funny story shared with us by Claire. This is a segment that we're starting here on the show called Prayers for the People. And this is an opportunity for you, dear listener, if you want to submit us funny, embarrassing, self-deprecating, but cheeky story about yourself. You can email it to prayformicahpod@gmail.com. So here we go. One time I went on this date with a guy I met online, and we decided to be all nostalgic and go to an old school roller rink. I looked so cool in my retro dress, but as soon as we hit the rink, things took a turn for the worse. The moment I stepped out on the rink, I realized I hadn't skated in 12 years. So I lost my balance and fell straight on my ass. I thought it was just a fluke, so got up, tried again, only to fall 2 seconds later. I must have fallen at least 6 more times, and each time was worse than the last one. To top it all off, my skirt flew up at one point. I'm pretty sure I flashed a bunch of kids in my bright green underwear. So my date and I tried, he tried to help me up, but it was so embarrassing that I just wanted to crawl under a rock and hide. But he was such a good sport about it all. It didn't take us long to finally just give up and go out for ice cream. So please pray for me, Micah.
It happened to me in high school, something similar, bowling. I fell right on my ass. I think it was my first actual cute little high school date. And I tried bowling, and I was too close to the little slip thing where it begins to get slippery. And I fell right on my ass. And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. His mom was there. Everybody just saw me tumble.
Oh, geez.
I feel for you.
Yeah, we feel for you, Claire. So everybody be praying for Ingrid. Be praying for Claire. For all those who fall on their asses at roller rinks or at bowling alleys. So yeah, prayers for the people. # prayers for the people. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to our guest. So we are here with Ingrid B. She was born in Mexico, but raised in Kansas City with dreams to explore the world. Since her status didn't allow her that privilege, she explored as much of the country as she could instead. Her corporate career took her to the Northeast, West, and Pacific Northwest, where she found healing and space to explore her spirituality. She began her spiritual journey in 2016 and has since found inner freedom, self-love, and has fully embraced her body. Her life goal now is to help others find inner freedom and joy for her life. She's currently located where it all began, in the heart of Kansas City. Ingrid, welcome.
Thank you, Micah.
So I met you through a friend, Evelyn, who was also on my show.
Yes.
Local photographer, creative. Shout out to Evelyn. And we hung out, and then the very next day you went to go to a sweat lodge ritual. So unfortunately you got really sick from that experience.
Very sick.
Caught some kind of spiritual energy. No.
Spirit flu. I got a spiritual flu. That's what I call it. I don't think it was COVID because it didn't feel like COVID. It felt like something deeper for sure.
Something
but yes, very
like
sick. Man, let me tell you, I there's just a lot of the sweat lodge and my desire to go. I've been on the last, I want to say, almost 2 years now. I've been in this place where I am embracing openness, especially when I refer to my healing journey. it being centered around openness. And all of these things that have happened in my life so far have been because I have remained open and being open to listening. And that doesn't always mean talking, right?
Sure.
And so, yeah, this opportunity came forth. The spirit came in and said, presented this opportunity. And I'd never heard of a sweat lodge before. And so I researched it, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, like I know that there's energy in here that no longer is serving me. And I think that this is Spirit's way of telling me it's time for you to release. Doing different ways, right? And I've done healing in different ways. And this was just one of those modalities, right? And when I was in there, I didn't necessarily feel that I was getting all of this like, this enlightenment experience that I had envisioned in my head about it.
Thought you'd see some visions or something.
Yeah,
maybe,
I thought I would feel
the
this.
delirium would create some kind of like
something, yes.
wall melting effect,
Yeah, because you're in the dark, right? So for a lot of us that have this fear of the darkness, or it can feel very claustrophobic, and because you're in this heat, really, really hot temperature, and you're around strangers. You have to change into clothing that you can kind of breathe in. So women are supposed to wear a dress or a skirt. So I changed my clothing, and we're in there and we're chanting and we're praying, and you're kind of you're opening up your own heart to whatever it is that you're praying for. And I went into it with a real deep intention to release, right? And release through the sweating process. And when I left, I was tired, obviously, because I had sweat a lot. But on my drive home, I began to just weep, and it wasn't a weeping of me in the present. It was me kind of weeping as the 5-year-old Ingrid, as the 10-year-old Ingrid, as this child Ingrid that was sitting in me. Because that was the intent behind the sweat lodge experience, was for me to heal this inner child, this wounded inner child. And so I'm on my drive and reflecting on how far I've come in my healing process and how kind I can be to that child in me. And that by the time I got home that night, I was so fatigued, so exhausted. And the next morning I went and I had breakfast with my mom. And that morning that I went to the sweat lodge, I visited with her. I forgot my towel and some other things, and I was on my way to the sweat lodge. And I was like, hey, Mom, like I'm going here. Can I come by really quick and get a towel or something like that? And I went over there, and we were having coffee, and I was telling her about this experience that I was going to have. And recently she's been a little bit more open about accepting that there were a lot of things that weren't okay in my childhood, and allowing it, like spirituality, to be that way of releasing that. And so we were talking about my childhood and all of the trauma that I incurred from it, and her having to be okay with listening to it, but knowing that I am now an adult taking matters into my own hands of my healing. And so we had this conversation, and I went the next day, and I was so tired. And I was like, it was probably just because I sweat a lot, and then my throat started to hurt. And then, oh my gosh, by 5 o'clock, I was so exhausted that I just went to bed, and I didn't get up until like 8 in the morning the next day. Like I didn't wake up. I was so tired. And then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I had to sit with that sickness and meditate on that sickness and be with that illness and what it was going to teach me. And they tell you in the sweat lodge, you might not feel the benefits or the effects of it in the moment, or even a day after or a week after, but it will come. And I feel that week was a week of me really tapping into my humanness, the fact that the body will no longer exist one day. That the body in Buddhism, there is this, and I don't remember exactly what part of the book it is a part of, but they talk a lot about the 5 remembrances. And in one of those remembrances, it's to remember that the human body will die one day, and knowing that one day we will die. And so I'm in the shower, and this is now Wednesday, and I'm in so much pain. My body is just in so much pain. I have chills, I have sweats. I have to wash my sheets twice because they're just drenched in sweat.
Oh, man.
So every couple of hours, I'm just feeling how vulnerable the human body is. And by Wednesday of this constant, I'm a little bit better, and then I'm really, really sick. I'm in the shower, and I just start bawling. And that's when I realized like what that medicine did for me, to remind me of how vulnerable the human body is, how resilient, but how vulnerable it is, and how one day the body will fail me. One day the body will fall ill. Like, that is a true statement.
So just like a total breakdown over a week, like just emotional, psychological, physical.
Man, so it took me about a week. Once I really sat with what the medicine was trying to do for me, and I surrendered to it, I started to feel better. And ever since then, it's just been these small progressions of really awesome things happening. I mean, like meeting you, learning about the whole podcasting world. Like, that's something that I've wanted to or dreamt about going into, something that my friends and family have always encouraged, and not something that I've really ever given attention or energy to. And so now that I'm on this new creative path of discovering who is Ingrid, it's just seeing all of these opportunities popping in everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I'm so honored this is my first ever podcast experience. Like,
hey, debut podcast. Here we are.
Hey,
everybody. We're excited. Ingrid's here. Told her when she gets rich and famous, and I'm still like recording in my friend's basements and not making money from this, I was like, just give me a shout out. That's all I need.
Watch out for me, world.
Yeah, you can just I want to see my friends excel and skyrocket out in this world, and just be like, I remember those times when I recorded Micah, and he had sheets on tables and rugs hanging up. You can't see it from the YouTube side, but yeah, I've got a little temporary setup at Tommy Studios. I'm gonna start calling my friend's house.
You
Tommy.
should. These are the moments that really matter, because this is where you really tap into your passion, into your the love for creativity. And
absolutely,
that's something that I've been trying to honor as I start this journey of completely switching paths to how I want to live my life and how I want to spend my breathing days. And really just honoring the process. There's a book one of the first books that I read on taking accountability and ownership for your life, called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things.
Yeah. And I was, at the time when I read it, I had a emotional breakdown, a mental breakdown. I had lost a partner to suicide, and I had not fully really processed. I was living alone. I had taken this corporate job coming out of college, and I moved out of Pennsylvania where I had a little bit of root, and all of a sudden I moved over to California and I lost it. Like, I had no support. I had one good friend, and obviously you can't really put all that on one friend. And I ended up moving back home. I quit my job. I was making a lot of money for a 25, 26-year-old. And I just quit. I sold everything in my apartment, and I called my mom and I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to come home. And I had quit this job, and I was driving Uber. And that's all I was doing while I was trying to figure out my life. And I felt so miserable. I was so depressed, and I just was so self-deprecating. Like, every word that I said about myself was just like, oh, you're such a bum, or you're such a loser. Like, you were here and now you're chauffeuring people. And I was like, I can't keep talking to myself like this. And so I started trying to find a book. And I don't even know how that book found its way to me. But I remember listening to it at the airport while I was waiting for rides, and just trying to listen to what this author was trying to tell me. And yeah, that book, and then many other books helped get me to where I am today. But yeah, that the whole Sweat Lodge experience is just another way that I think Spirit and Source right now are helping me go to my path. And helping me see my path. It's almost like this veil is slowly coming off of me, and I'm discovering, I think before we started recording, and I think that's kind of like my theme. Like I'm discovering myself. I'm discovering all this new version of myself. And it's been a beautiful process seeing it kind of unfold right before my eyes. So yeah, really honored to be here and be able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for giving us a little bit of kind of some of your transitions and journeys. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about what some of the background behind kind of the, I don't know, spiritual kind of path that you've set yourself on. I think we kind of talked about, I don't know, did you grow up in the Christian worldview? Like, again, we don't have to go into all the family traumas, all the childhood traumas, but this is, if there's a place to do it, it's also here. That's fine, but I just wanted to hear a little bit about just kind of what got you into like pursuing mindfulness, meditation, and yoga as like spiritual practices in your everyday life.
So I grew up born Catholic, Hispanic Catholic, but both of my parents were not huge fanatics of church, especially my dad. And so I was the one that pursued religion. My parents didn't encourage it. I was the one that pursued it. And I pursued religion because I felt so lonely in my home. I didn't have support from my parents. I didn't have a good relationship with my siblings. And so it was very lonely. And so you're in your mind all the time, and you're just experiencing life, and you're experiencing a lot of suffering. Well, one of the first natural instincts is to, look up to something or try to cling on to something, right? And I was born Catholic, so that was what I pursued, white Jesus.
Yeah, he's the best, man. I fuck with white Jesus. Actually, I don't. I fuck with baby Jesus. Yeah.
Yes, I can fool with baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus is cuter, like
more
like
digestible.
that and wine Jesus. Turn water to wine Jesus. Those are the two. I fuck with those two Jesuses.
They're invited to the cookout. And so I really, really clung on to that. And I happen to come from a extremely stereotypical machista family. So machismo is really just this misogynistic culture. And my parents were no different. And that meant that my every movement was controlled. And so going to church was one of the only times that I was allowed to not be by my parents, that I could go alone. And so I would beg my parents, my dad really, for permission for my aunt to take me to church. And I didn't really read the Bible too much, but I loved the energy of the church. When I would walk in, I felt Spanish Mass is very different than English Mass.
Yeah.
Spanish Mass is just a little bit more lively.
You got a little more spirit flow going.
Just a little bit, they got a little clapping, a little going on, and they got little instruments and has a guitar sometimes, a little piano.
I'm sure there's a little more color in the room, clothing wise, a little more, a little vibrancy.
More lively. And sometimes I would go to English Mass and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really dry and really boring. But I really loved the messaging. And then I joined a youth group while I was in high school during my teenage years, the very intense hormonal years. And that group really helped me find some sort of community. And then my dad died. And he died in October of 2012. But before then, I really hung on to religion. And slowly, my relationship with Catholicism started to change as when I turned 18, and I started to have a little bit more awareness of my situation at home and knowing that I controlled it, and battling with religion and like why my God would put me in a home that didn't necessarily want me around. And when my dad died, I really hung on to white Jesus because that was all I felt that I had. And because I struggled with my relationship with men, because I had such a turbulent relationship with my siblings and my father, feeling like I could count on this male figure of a spirit made me feel like I had some kind of a father figure in my life. And so when he died, I really hung on to the Christian God, right? To help me see this through, my father, right? And then a year and a half later, not even a year and a half, I want to say like a year and 2 months, I had fallen in love for the first time in my life, and I went on to really want to save this person. And I developed a toxic relationship with someone that unfortunately ended in suicide. And so when he passed away, I really questioned my life and why God would want me to keep suffering. And I couldn't see myself anymore seeing how prayer was going to help me and how me reading the Bible or me reading scriptures was going to heal my heart. I couldn't connect with it. And I'd already started to kind of move a little bit away from it because I couldn't connect. I just couldn't connect. And I said, well, why am I chasing somebody else to give me the answers when I still don't feel okay within myself? Like I'm still talking to myself the way that I talk to myself. Reading these scriptures or like going to these church groups is not really helping me change that, my relationship with myself. And so I had taken this job. 2 weeks after he died, I had to pack up all my entire belongings in my apartment and start this corporate job that I had worked so hard to get coming out of college. And now I have to go prove myself to this entirely
More
new
white
beast.
men.
Yeah. And I had never, in college, I went to K-State, really amazing school for people of color, but I had never, in a predominantly white institute region, K-State's really good at being there for the students of color. But nonetheless, I was in an environment where I really wasn't that wanted either, right? In these populations. I had never been around so many white people in my life up to that point, really. And so once I had to work with these people, right? And I felt very lost, but I had a little guardian angel. Her name was Rupa. So Rupa. And I was very careful with who I told about this tragedy because here I am, this brown woman in a very conservative company, just starting out. They had just started a kind of like a diversity program to try to get more people of color into the company. So it was very, very, very white. And now you're here as one of the only like specks of different. And I wasn't a suburban brown kid. I was a kid from the hood. So it's very different, trying to put somebody and just put them in there. Like it's very hard. And now I'm by myself in a small town in Pennsylvania. Like, oh my gosh. And I'm grieving. And I couldn't connect. So Rupa is Hindu. And I started to really fall in love with just exploring religions.
Yeah.
And seeing what fit and what made me feel better. because you are born into a religion. They tell you what to believe and what not to believe, right? Because that's just the way that we are programmed in our families. And when you get to become of a certain age, you start to kind of question some of those things. And I think that you should have the agency to do that, and question that and explore whatever actually does feel good for you.
Absolutely.
So I started going to temple with Rupa and learning about different gods and hearing the way that the Swami spoke about life and experiences. And it wasn't about following, this one leader. It was about how you navigate your own emotions in your life and how some of these gods can kind of help guide you on that path. But it's about you. And so then I started to kind of delve into spirituality. And I was like, okay, well, now this is about me. And it's about how I feel about myself. It's not about trying to appease some God. It's about how I can find God inside of myself. And that's when I started to open myself up to Buddhism, because Buddhism was not about chasing anything besides your own inner peace and finding the Buddha nature, right? Like finding what is freedom for yourself. So now it really felt like I was taking my life into my own hands with the intent to be free and to be of love, and having love ultimately be what guides my choices, my love, right? And so spirituality became something that saved me, Buddhism, really. And so after going through all of that grief, spirituality is ultimately what helped bridge that for me. And I'm very grateful for the practice, because the practice is a daily practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like Buddhism is more of a philosophy, way of being. There are Christian Buddhists, Hindu Buddhists, but it's a beautiful kind of framework. And I'm sorry about your friend. I'm sure listeners, it's hard, especially during the pandemic. I'm sure people can relate to someone. I know this was before the pandemic, but there was a lot of folks who took their lives. And I had a friend who did that also
I'm so
a year and a half ago. And so it's hard. It's a really heavy weight to carry, and it sounds like you've had to do a lot of personal digging, that's what I think it's pretty natural, right? To just what could I have done differently? What could I have done this? But also trying to remember, at least for my friend, I don't know, because I know you said that the relationship that you were in was kind of a toxic, dynamic, but still trying to honor the good memories or the good experiences, shared times together. And it can feel like pretty much a wake up call to our own mortality. I had friends who were who died during the pandemic. It was by COVID, because complications with their health, and they're 20 somethings, 30 somethings, and it's just
just gone.
Oh man, just gone. Yeah. Our bodies will fail us, like you said at the beginning. And what are we going to do with the time while I'm breathing? Or how did you phrase it? My breathing life. I liked that.
Yeah, and being able to take accountability for the breaths that you take, and knowing that the breaths that you take matter to you, and learning how to find purpose in that breath. Buddhism and breathing. Recently, I want to say over the last year, yoga. Yoga has been very instrumental in how I have healed my body image issues and my self-esteem issues. And when I think about the way that I breathe when I practice yoga, it has allowed me to really work on my mindfulness, because you're breathing always, right? And how little do you actually pay attention to the rhythm of your breath? And the reality is that when you're breathing, this is the way that you're signaling to your brain and your body how you're experiencing life. And so if you're constantly out of breath, or if you're constantly breathing like really quickly, right, your body is interpreting that as stress. It's interpreting it as danger, right? So now you're starting to create all of these chemical responses in your body that tells you I'm in danger. And so, this is when we talk about like the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. And so when you learn how to breathe, I mean, even when you're in traffic, right? Like you think about these moments when you're experiencing stress, and when you are experiencing stress and you can take just a very split second, that's all it takes, is to tap into where you're breathing and belly breathe that through. Like you truly, it's like almost instant how you can change your response, right? Because now you're not coming from this place of I'm in panic, right? My body's not okay, right? So now my brain is interpreting that as I'm in danger, right? Like I'm coming from a place of clarity. And so I try to practice that daily when I'm driving in traffic. That's one of the ways that, mindfulness is this. It's not this thing where you sit and you meditate. Like, yes, that is wonderful. And yes, that is necessary. And there are moments for that. But you're practicing mindfulness every day. Like you can make that choice to be present and to be active with your breath. Because when you're active and present with your breath, you're active and present in life. And breathing, learning how to breathe. I don't think that we're taught that, because if we really knew how to breathe, that would really solve, I think, the majority of our problems.
Right.
I really do believe that.
Yeah. Like, they talk about like if you're in a coworker like altercation or some kind of, situation where you're about to fight, like take a beat, take a breath, like, because otherwise, literally the fight, flight, or freeze part of lizard brain starts to kick in, and it's like there is no physical tiger threat in front of me, but my body is going to interpret that because I've like stopped breathing and we're having a conflict. And our brain is literally just sitting in a dark cavern and has no idea what's going on the outside except for what we can. So it's amazing, the studies and research. I don't know if you've pretty popular TED Talk. I can't remember the lady's name, but she talks about power poses. Yeah, just like how you can literally just shift your physical, chemical, like lower your cortisol levels and all that just by standing real big with your arms up and just
Superman pose.
Before you go into interview, just stretch it out and be a psycho and look in the mirror and I am amazing. No, I'm just kidding. Just like,
I mean, let me tell you, that
are
also
a
does
god.
Have some power.
I mean, that's what I'm like. There's a fine balance between like doing that and like, doing that in your brain, and then also like, am I a psycho? Or if people saw me, it's like right before you walk in, I'm just like, you will do amazing today on this podcast. You've got this. Fucking ask those questions, Micah. Ask them. Power, dominance. And it's like, okay, Micah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I'm going to pray for you, Micah. I'm going to step out here. I'm going to be praying for you. I just find it weird. Like, but it works, right? Like if you're in the car and you talk to yourself, like I've had to like disrupt my own negative thought patterns. Cause like just driving and for no reason, just you're a piece of shit. You're fake, whatever, just a stream of negative thoughts. And you're just like, actually, no, I'm not those things. You just like audibly say it and just start like giving yourself affirmations. It's amazing how it just totally reverses the tide of whatever. Maybe I was dehydrated that moment. My brain was just like,
no, literally, that's what it is being able to take a moment and step yourself outside of this emotional thing that you're experiencing right now.
Spiral kind of happening.
And take a second and take a breath and look at it from a third place, right? From third person, so that you can see things as they are, not the way that you're perceiving them, right? Like I'm a piece of shit, right? So now you're finding all these ways where you're a piece of shit. And now you're continuing to add on to that story, right? And it's being able to take a second and, because you're breathing, come back to what is true, your breath. Come back to what is true, that you are sitting. Come back to what is true, that you can see. Very simple things that are true can help bridge and disrupt that thought, right? That in essence, I actually brought the book. I think I brought the book. It's called The Healing Self. And that book, I mean, there's so many little tabs that I have highlighted on the book because, and I touch on that in my book a lot, because it allowed me to fully understand what my body was doing with the thoughts that I was having. And when you can understand what is happening when you have a thought, it's a lot easier for you to stop yourself when you see that you're hurting yourself. Because when you truly love yourself, you really don't ever want to hurt yourself. And so when you can see when you're hurting yourself, obviously you're not going to hurt yourself, right? Because you take care of yourself because you love yourself, and you love yourself because you take care of yourself, right? And it's the most beautiful cycle to be in. And that's why the breath is so important.
Yeah.
Because it can cut through all of that noise, right? A thought, I think in the book, and I might be butchering it, but in the book it says a thought is only, it's the first sound or the most subtle sound of consciousness, right? Or something along those lines, where they talk like about primordial sounds and the impact that they have on the body. And like that book is just absolutely amazing because, it, you know, a thought, and in the Zen practice, because I follow the Zen teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, and I go to my Sangha, and like that's my group. Like that is the
cool.
group that held me down during the pandemic and after the breakup of my engagement. And man, he talks about like tea, right, and a thought, and the way that we should interpret thoughts, right? Thoughts really just are like they're nothing, right? We are the ones that put emotion behind the thought that create a reaction. And so a thought, we can't stop that. A thought is just something that exists, and it's just something that happens, and it's both a blessing and a curse of being a conscious human being.
Right.
And that we've been allowed by the universe to have this level of consciousness. And a thought comes in and out. We're the ones that choose whether or not it stays and whether or not it grows, right? And so the way that he talks to it, he's like, you know, a thought is not something that you can avoid. It's not something that you can stop. But it doesn't mean that you have to let it sit down and have tea. As it comes in, it comes out. And the breath is what facilitates that process of that flow. And when I can think in that way, when I'm having a distorted thought, putting my hand on my belly and taking a big belly breath in and coming back to what is true, which is my breath. The fact that I am breathing, the fact that all of these things are happening all at once to ensure that I have the proper circulation of blood, the right amount of blood going into my veins, into my brain, into my eyes that give me the ability to see. Like that is what helps ground you to reality, to what is present, to what is true. Because nature is always in that state, right? So that's how I think about breath. I'm very passionate about breath, especially when I'm practicing yoga. And just breathing in general. I like to believe that I am on that path of being a really good intentional breather.
It's like, I may not achieve much in life, but if I can just master my breathing.
You can master it all, baby.
Yeah.
You can master it all. You can talk to any spiritual a master, and they will all talk about breath to some degree, because breath is what gives life, right, to a human being. It's the first thing that happens when you come out of the womb, right? Like that is what brings life. When someone dies, you can feel that life force leaving their body, right? You can feel that because there's no more breath, right? And so breath is so powerful, and we don't give it the roses and the flowers that it deserves. Because if you truly did know how to breathe, you wouldn't have a bad relationship with your body. If you really knew how to properly appreciate your breath, you wouldn't be worried about your rolls. You wouldn't be worried about your double chin. You wouldn't be worried about what jiggles, because baby, you're breathing.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that's how I've started to approach breath and the power of breath.
Yeah. Can we delve a little bit more into, because you're pretty open about like your body image and just that kind of body affirmation you're trying to like what are some of the tips or things, and I want to bring up that you do have a 30-day like lifestyle guide, Live Intentionally, a guidebook to living thoughtfully in 30 days. And so like, what are some of the tools? Like, I'm assuming, only because I just got a copy yesterday, shame on Ingrid not getting it to me sooner before the interview, but yeah, like what do you hope, like, for readers, like what kind of new habits and things are like, what lessons have you learned, and what are, I'm assuming, are tips and like tools you're trying to like pass on to other folks who are going through similar like body affirmation, needing that self-acceptance, practicing breath and mindfulness?
Yeah. So I didn't have, and that's what I think is so beautiful about where I am right now, is that I'm discovering myself through the eyes of love now, through the lens of love. And in this book, I talk about all of the things that had to happen in order for me to find that. And it all, and it for me anyway, and I'm going to assume that for a lot of people that struggle with body image issues, it didn't start from yesterday. For me, it was a very hardwired thing to be self-deprecating, because that is what was in my genes. There's a really awesome book that I'm listening to right now called It Didn't Start With You. And when I started my healing process, just like any other grief, it's angry. Like, you're angry, you're mad, you're resentful, as you go through the stages of grief. And I always struggled. I struggled with my reality, because I couldn't understand why my family, particularly my father, was so evil towards me. I know he did love me, but he also was not mentally well. And it wasn't until I started talking about my life experiences to people that they were like, this should be like a Lifetime movie.
Wow.
This is intense. And I mean, I'm still working through it in therapy, right? Where I downplay so much of the things that I experienced or that happened, because it was so normalized. Violence was so normalized. Speaking badly about my body was so normalized. And that's the way that I grew up. My dad grew up just idolizing whiteness. And that's very common in the Latino culture, to be colorist. And that is the messaging that I got, that I was not white enough, that my hair was not straight enough, that my eyes weren't blue. And I look like my dad. So I'm growing up and he's telling me, we see a pretty white girl walking down the street, and he's like, I wish that was my daughter.
Shit.
And I'm your kid, and you're telling me that I'm not worth shit. And it started to become such a daily routine that this is just the way that they spoke to me. Both my siblings, and obviously my dad was the ringleader of this, right? And so it gave them permission to also be cruel to me. And so now all of a sudden I'm constantly berated about what I look like. And that messaging just continued up until my teenage years, that I was a pig. Like, we would sit at dinner and that was the daily routine, was to make me cry. So any self-esteem that I would build up, it was crushed at every dinner session. He would hold on to different parts of my body and he would say, oh my gosh, like, look at this, like, it's getting bigger. Tu lonja, which is like your gut, like your roll, like, it's just getting bigger, and you look XYZ and no one's ever going to want you. And who's ever going to want to marry somebody that looks like you? And so I would wear really large clothing, and sometimes I would even wear my dad's sweats, because I was just so ashamed. And it got to the point that I would look at myself in the mirror, and I'm 12, 13, 14 years old, and I'm starting to just grab different parts of my body and repeating literally verbatim, like things that my dad would say to me. And now, like, this is just the way that I thought of myself. And so anybody that found me attractive, I'd be like, what is wrong with you?
Wow.
Like, how could you ever see beauty in me when, like, no, like that doesn't exist for me. And that really shaped the way that I spoke to myself. It shaped the way that I looked at myself. It shaped my reality. And so when he died, I became very angry. When he died, I hadn't fully processed my childhood and the fact that it wasn't good. It was so, and because we were undocumented immigrants, I didn't really have agency to talk about my life, because it was like, you're not really supposed to be seen anywhere, right? Like, you don't start trouble anywhere. And so that shaped it, like, I just being invisible, right? To stay as invisible as I can. And all of that just continued to spiral. And so when I lost my partner to suicide, I started gaining more weight because I was depressed, and all I did was sleep and cry. And I felt like I was so out of control. Like, I was going through drive-thrus, and I didn't grow up eating fast food. I just was force-fed a lot. And food was it was weaponized. And so food was just, I had a very turbulent relationship with food. And so I found myself constantly going to these drive-thrus and feeling like, why am I doing this? I know that this is not good for me. And I feel like shit, but I can't stop myself from going to this drive-thru twice now in a day. And that'd been a practice that I'd never done before. And I would find myself crying after I finished eating this donut, like, gosh, like, you're so, why can't you control this? Like, why can't you stay on a diet? And just being so mad that I couldn't be what my father wanted me to be, right? Like, I couldn't be this skinny, like, tall, white passing girl. Like, I just couldn't. Like, I'm short, I'm fat, and I'm brown. Like, you can't change that.
Fuck you, Dad.
You can't change it. And now I'm stuck with all this trauma that this man put inside of me, right? That I'm unworthy, that I don't deserve happiness. And it got proven right? Because my partner died. And now I'm really miserable. And now I keep eating because that's all I can think about to comfort myself. Because that's what I used to survive my childhood. So I'm going through all of these episodes, because now then I start whatever that online thing is, where, like, they send you that protein powder and they sell you those workout videos. Can't remember what it is, but it's like basically like Herbalife, but like online and with like workout videos, right?
Sure.
Like your 21-day fix or whatever they call it. So now I'm like on this thing, and then I fail at that, obviously, because diets don't work. And now I'm like really upset with myself because I can't stay on, and like this coach isn't doing enough for me because I'm still not better and I'm still not skinny, and like I still hate myself. And I start to just feel all this anger towards my father. Like, you did this to me, like I now I don't know how to eat, and like I don't even know how to enjoy eating, and like this whole experience of just being alive sucks. Like, and I can't think of anybody ever like liking me or like loving me and accepting that in my life, because you made me feel like I wasn't worthy of any of that. And I just remember feeling so angry towards him, that like, you made me hate myself. You made me hate everything about me. And I kept trying to find ways. I started reading a bunch of self-help books and trying to understand why I was so sad, and trying to figure out how to not be angry, because I could see so much of my father starting to come out in me not being able to trust people, me just constantly being so mad inside that I started to be mad at other people, or like have these outbursts of just being upset, or just carrying around this anger in my body. and seeing how I was turning into him, right? And my dad died when he was 47. Didn't have any teeth before he was like, by the time he was like 45, he didn't have any teeth. And it just looked like a very sad way to live. And I could see myself starting to get there because I was gaining weight and I wasn't feeling good in my body. And it was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop this. I feel like it's a snowball effect and I cannot seem to find a way to stop it. And that scared me because I felt like I was reliving, like I was just continuing this cycle, right? And so I referenced the book earlier, It Didn't Start With You, because I think a lot of us think that we were born this way, or, you know, that like we are responsible. And the truth is that a lot of who you are right now is a collection of all the genes that had to come together to create you.
Yeah.
And thanks to the study of epigenetics, which is the study of how your genes work, right? Like what turns on and off. I started to learn that a lot of the stuff that was sitting inside of my body, like the sadness that I was carrying or this bitterness or this anger, like all of that was in my father. All of that was in my mother, like the trauma that she endured. All of that was already there. Like I was created as a byproduct of this. So although I didn't ask for any of that, I now, with the awareness that I had and have, I now can release it because now I'm aware that that is in there. And that is when I started to practice self-compassion, because we have this, oh, I can't lose weight, or I need to lose these 20 pounds. And, oh, why are my genes like this? Like, oh, why my whole family is big and big boned, and why I just want to be skinny, you know, like it's a tale that I hear a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And so we blame our genes for like why certain things don't work, right? And I started to dig a little bit deeper into that. Like the trauma is stored in your cells.
Yeah.
There's so much that is stored in the body already. And we start to think that like, oh, well, I'm broken, or, you know, like or why is this happening to me? Or I mean, even sometimes when you think like, oh gosh, like you sound just like your dad, or you sound just like your uncle, right? Like a lot, I mean, like that's a part of what made you, right? And so how it's a disservice to not acknowledge it, right? Even if it's something that is not good, it's there. And the more that you don't acknowledge it and recognize it and heal it, the more that it's just going to grow and it's going to harden and it's going to cause suffering, right? And so when I started to be kinder to myself and practice self-compassion, it was really hard because I was trained to not be kind to myself. And I think society does a really good job at making us feel that way. Like we have to be hard on ourselves, and really westernized culture.
Yeah. I feel like there's some kind of lie built up around it that at least the kind of the mindset around it, I feel like, at least what I feel like is ingrained in my mind, what I've had to try to undo is this idea that it somehow will motivate me, you know, that it somehow, if I can just, you know, if I don't, you know, look at myself in the mirror and be a little like, you know, whatever, you know, I might say I'm trying to be honest with myself or this or that, but, you know, in my mind, like, yeah, I'm trying to spark a fire under my butt to like, yeah, these jeans aren't, you know, they are tight. Like, fuck, Micah, you got to like go to the gym, you know? And like the reality is like, yeah, I'll end up going and getting a cheeseburger later that day because I feel depressed that I, you know, couldn't fit my jeans earlier. Like the whole self-deprecation, the whole it doesn't work for motivation's sake. And somehow in culture and society, we think like, well, unless someone's like, yeah, like ragging on me about something or doing this, I won't change. And it's like, when has like negative feedback ever been a motivator for change? But for some reason we always think it going to like do something different today. It's not. No.
And you can sit here and say, and I'm sure that there's going to be folks that say, oh, well, I function well under stress, or I function when I can speak to myself this way, I achieve great things. And yeah, that might be true, but think about when that doesn't go through. Think about that one moment when you do fail or things don't work out the way that you want them to. Now you have this black and white thinking because now you forget every good thing that you've ever done, all these achievements that you have been able to reach. You can't stop thinking of that one thing that you didn't do right or where you did fail. And what do? It's as if none of that matters because you weren't perfect all the time. And that is what I had to battle with. Like, how can I deal with my imperfectionism, right? How can I be okay with the fact that I'm not okay? Like, how can I live with that? How can I speak kindness into myself when I'm having those thoughts, right? How can I still acknowledge the fact that this is hard, that I failed, but I still deserve compassion? And that when my engagement went to shit and I moved out and I was doing my thing and a lot of things fell apart. I was struggling with my relationship with my mother, and DACA was also through the pandemic. It was just a lot of things were up in the air, and I was very terrified of not being able to get my renewal on time. And up to that point, I was still struggling with an identity crisis because of my DACA situation and being undocumented. That I had another emotional mental breakdown. I had to go on leave for 3 months. And that was a very hard thing for me to accept, that I needed help and that I needed to take a break. Because we often think, especially around mental illness, I'm going to power through this. Right. And I don't need a break. You know, I don't want people to think that I'm weak. And I didn't even tell my mom that I was on leave. I want to say until maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before it was over. Because I didn't need to hear anything about how she felt about it. I did not care for her opinion. And culturally, Latinos obviously don't talk about it. It's not something that we focus any energy to because it's not real in their minds. Depression isn't real, and your sadness is, you're not crazy, and you're not a weak individual. So
I grew up in the evangelical Baptist world, and that was, we did a lot of that. Like, actually, my friend who took his life struggled with mental health since high school, and I remember him going through this period of like gave his life to Jesus, and that was the song and dance that we told everybody. Like, if you're depressed, like all you need is Jesus. You don't need these meds. You don't need this, and like God can heal you, and this and that. And I remember him coming to me like a couple years later after, we were like going to church, Passion on Fire for God and all this stuff. And him just like basically told me like, yeah, that lasted like 2 months.
Yeah.
And I realized like, fuck, not even Jesus is going to take this from me. Like I thought God was going to do this, and just like, I think that's why he kind of lost faith in any form of spirituality, kind of became an atheist. He just realized like, oh, I have a chemical imbalance. Anyways, I don't know. It's just the same kind of like, there's an antidote to your problem. It's more just like, no, it's probably pills. Like it's probably therapy and some other like real scientific things that can help.
That's it. And what is real? And right now I'm struggling, and that needs to be acknowledged. And it was always, and it continues to be a conversation, sometimes difficult with my family, because I have been open about it. And I've been very open about the trauma and about the violence and wanting to heal that. And unfortunately, I can't say that that is something that is relatable to my siblings and sometimes even my mom. And so because I have been so open, sometimes they even have used it like it's supposed to hurt me. And I'm like, you guys think that it's offensive that like I go to therapy? I'm not offended. Look at me. I'm actually feeling okay. Like, you're the one that looks like you're hurting right now. And so, yeah, when we talk about mental health, it's just, well, anyway, what I was talking about with this breakup that happened and this mental breakdown that I had, I met this amazing therapist, and I started reading this book that came out of this source, and it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a very, very famous book, and I had no idea how famous it was. But it's this book by this awesome author, that studied PTSD in veterans and children, and how the body keeps the score. The body keeps all of these traumatic experiences that happen. It stays in your body, right? Physically, energetically, chemically, like that. It's an imprint, right? And so it helped me understand my PTSD. It helped me understand, because losing somebody to suicide is very hard and lonely. And I'm sure that you can understand that with your friend. And losing a partner to suicide is even more lonely, because you, like, who can you talk to about that love that only existed between you and that person? That was only you and them. That kind of love only existed between you and them. It wasn't a parental love, right? This was a romantic love that only you knew with that person. And so all of a sudden, for it to be just gone, you can't relate it to, it's just very hard to, it's hard for people to empathize and truly understand that kind of loss and that kind of pain, because you feel like a widow. You do, and you can't really talk about it with people because they don't get it. Like, you weren't in love with the person the way that I was in love with that person.
Right.
And I remember sometimes just being so frustrated with myself, like, oh gosh, like, what would life be if, he had another girlfriend prior to me, or very shortly broken up after me, or dated somebody, if we had broken up, like, to be able to kind of relate to the pain. But I was his first girlfriend. He was my first boyfriend. So it was very lonely. And, well, anyway, what I was getting to with my time, my last couple of my last year, a little bit over a year in Washington, was this relationship with my therapist, and how he taught me self-compassion. And I'd listened to this book called Self-Compassion by Kristen Knopf, I think is her last name. And I skimmed it. I mean, I'm a big audio book person. And I listened to it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like, this makes sense. Yeah, but this is like, because I was one of those people that was very hard on myself. And I was like, well, if I work harder, then, everything's going to be fixed. If I work out harder in the gym, it's going to heal me. If I speak this way to myself and be hard on myself, like, I'm going to get past this at some point. And because that's the way that I was raised, right? With violence. And so he teaches me to be gentle with myself. And that was the first time that I was introduced to softness and ease and how to be nice to myself. And that changed everything. I started writing to myself. I started really talking to the child in me. I started to speak kinder to myself and find ways where I could speak kinder to myself where it made sense. Like, you can do these affirmations, and this is why some people are like, oh, I don't believe in affirmations, right? Because you have to believe in what you're saying, and it has to be true to you. You can't say, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire, and that's going to be your affirmation. I'm going to be a millionaire. If you don't fully believe it, right? If you don't fully know that in your bones, right? So you have to create an affirmation that is true and valid to you. I am doing my best, right? Whatever it is that is true for you, that is positive and that is good. And I talk about that in my book. The Healing Self has a really great exercise on how to create your own affirmations that are true and valid for you, because affirmations do work, but only if they are true to you, right? And so that really transformed the way that I looked at my body, the way that I treated my body, right? I used to avoid having to touch my belly. I avoided feeling it. I avoided all of it because it was violence. Like, I mean, my dad would grab onto it, and it was with the purpose of being hurtful.
Right.
And so that's the only way that I knew how to be to myself, was to be hurtful to myself, was to treat my body like it didn't belong, like it was separate from me. And the moment that I realized that I work in conjunction with my body, my mind, and my spirit all work in one whole system, it was impossible for me to continue to enact violence onto myself. I just can't do it anymore. And even there, I mean, obviously that there's still small moments where like some of those hardwired things pop up. But this is where, you know, that hurt 15-year-old girl comes up, and me driving home from the sweat lodge, you know, telling myself and crying to myself, like, well, the Ingrid of now, the Ingrid of today, I got you, girl. Like, I couldn't save you back then, but I can be here for you now. And that is what has changed and helped transform my relationship with myself, because that being kind to yourself is one of the hardest things that you can do, because we live in a world where we are constantly told that we're not enough. And that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, there's a point at the beginning of the book where he talks to, you know, how life used to be back then. We didn't have podcasts. You know, TV existed for a couple of hours a day, you know, and you were out there, and he talks about it in this book, and whoever has read it, I know that they know what part I'm talking about. Can't exactly remember the like word for word, but he's like, you know, you used to be a farmer, and you'd be, you know, just digging whatever you were going to be digging. And you weren't thinking about how your neighbor down the street was building a bigger hole because you didn't check it on Facebook, you know, so you weren't comparing yourself to anybody because you were in your own world, right? You were focused on just yourself and getting through the day and getting enough hay or whatever it was, right, to sustain your life. You weren't thinking about the next iPhone or the next gadget that you don't have or the next vacation that you can't afford and why you can't afford it, and constantly comparing yourself on social media. That didn't exist, right? So that's why we give so many fucks, because there's so much to like, it's overwhelming, right? And so, I've started to learn how to disassociate, or really just build a fortress around myself where things just, you know, come in and out, like and it doesn't stay.
And I think that author, I haven't read the book, but from what friends have shared, it's not that we don't give a fuck about anything, but it's about choosing what we are going to prioritize to give a fuck about.
Exactly.
And so when you decide, okay, you know, family or friends or self-care, the things that like you choose to give a fuck about, like pour yourself into that and let that be part of you. Because there's so much going on in the world, and I hate to sound like an old guy, but I'm very worried for my nieces and nephews or any just little kids, like just the constant barrage like of information, and just like seeing my little nephew who's not even a year old and just instantly already kind of semi knows how to use an iPhone, you know, like,
oh my gosh,
just the interface between humans and technology and how that's rewiring and like the ramifications of that with AI. It's just going to be astounding. And the human mind is meant to be like points of like, I'm at high alert because I need to find food, shelter, clothing. That's the high alert portion I need. But then there's a lot of like staring at that cave wall and, hey, let's do some hand paintings on it. I'm kind of bored, you know, like let's draw these cows on it. That'd be kind of fun, you know, like we have to pass some time somehow in this cave, and that was like the simplest, you know. So that's why I'm like edging towards. I know it looks like I have a lot of serious setup of technology and computer and mics right now, but I'm very close to like just like living in the wilderness and like only like writing books on like a typewriter and just like I'm like
letting it all go.
I'm just like, okay, yeah, like if people don't, I don't know, I've heard of monks and people who do that like as like their kind of form of life, like they're, you know, choosing how to like let their existence be a form of resistance to that kind of worldview. Like I can't remember who it. Maybe it's blanking on his name.
That used to be a monk.
Yeah,
Jay
used to be a
Shetty.
monk. Yeah, well,
Is it Jay Shetty?
Henry Newen, Nowen or whatever is one guy, but I'm thinking of somebody else. Anyways, he actively doesn't use laptops or things to write. He writes books and stuff all the time, poetry. But because there's all these rare earth, cobalt, and minerals and all these things that it's just kind of one of those things where I live in a world where that's necessary for my job and existence and things. But the same argument can be made by my nieces and nephews or the few later generations when they're like, well, I need this implant because this is the only way we can exist. And buy, sell, and trade is I have to have this job that scans, the DNA hard. Sorry, that was my robot AI fear-mongering, side trail, rabbit.
And you're talking to a techie here. I'm coming back from the Mecca of tech, and I will say, I don't know, it's such a necessary evil. And I was thinking about this today, actually, this morning, as I was preparing myself to be here, and how I want to choose to see my life and my legacy, and thinking, gosh, what do I want to leave with my niece and my nephew? How do I want to leave an impact? And this again goes back to the Buddhist philosophy, right? That your actions are your continuation. You don't ever truly die, right? You transform. And you transform through your action. The only thing that you do have and the only thing that you do carry with you is action. And that's your only true belonging, are your actions. And over the last couple of months or year, I've discovered that I want to be of influence. And I don't want to be, the stereotypical influencer, right? When you think, oh yeah, I'm an influencer. No, I want to influence the way that people see their lives, the way that people feel about their lives. I want to be able to bring awareness into people's lives, to help them remember to breathe, to fully exist in purpose. Because I think too, when I was a little girl, America Ferrera was the first fat brown girl that I ever saw on TV. And I have so much respect for her, because the times that we were growing up, you didn't see that. You barely saw any brown people on American television, let alone a fat girl. And she was on this movie on Disney Channel called Step It Up or something like that. And it was just a bunch of brown girls from the hood that wanted to cheer, right? And I remember when I saw her the first, I'll never forget the way I felt. I felt so seen. And I think about where I am now and the position that I hold as a 30-year-old brown woman, full-on adult. I'm an auntie. I've reached that place in my life. I'm an auntie now. I'm not a young single girl anymore. I'm an auntie single lady. I'm an auntie. Got auntie vibes.
Got your wine bottle, wine glass. You're like that, badass auntie, meme,
Yes, that's me.
She can eat her pizza here in the living room. Don't you tell her to go to her room.
Yes, that is me. Okay.
You need to borrow the car?
Maybe with some bud.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more of a bud auntie than a wine auntie.
Yeah, that's good.
But we can get with both. But
yeah, that's good.
But yeah, so when I think about where I want to be my own version of my America Ferrera, right? I want to be able to let little girls see me, my niece or even my nephew. My nephew at one point, if you see me walking around locally, I'm always showing my belly now. So I'm always in crop tops and because I'm just living and I'm loving the way that I'm living. And that's just it, right? I'm not letting all of these things that don't really exist. And so one day my nephew asked me, hey, Tio, because he calls me Tio. He's like, hey, Tio, why's your belly out? And I was like, because it's out. Why do I need to explain that? And and it was along the lines of like, basically like, why are you fat? Right. And I was like, well, you know, like it actually, the fat protects my organs, you know, and, you know, and he's like 5, right? 4 or 5. And he's never really seen a big person or a bigger person, right? That isn't like skinny with no fat on their belly, like just be all out here. And he asked me this question and I was like, you know, it protects my organs. And I mean, I still look cute, don't I? And he was like, yeah, you know? And so like you're building this way of by example, right? Of you fully loving every part of who you are. And he's, you know, a 5-year-old child that's already dealing with fat phobia. And, you know, and he's made little comments here and there where he's like, yeah, you know, like I got a belly too, or I'm fat too. And to see that there is somebody in his life that he admires and that he loves, fully embrace who they are, and the fact that you can be fat and still have value. You can be fat and still have self-esteem. You can be fat. Like those things are not what, you know, like they can live in unison together and in harmony. Like you don't have to live that way. And that is what I hope now as I, you know, restructure my vision and like how I see myself as a creative, like what does that look like for me? You know, and people have asked me that, right, as I'm still developing my business and how I want to, you know, present myself to the world. I just hear people tell me, you know, just keep being you. And I was like, what does that mean? Like being me, like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? I get it's a compliment, but I don't get it.
Right. And I don't know about you, but there's a version of myself that I like to think I'm like the same of me than this podcast, but there's a me that's with my family. There's a me that's with my friends, you know? And so it is kind of like, I get it. They're saying just go with the flow, be natural, you know, don't try to force it, you know? And what iteration of Micah is, you know, being unveiled in this moment is what needed to be unveiled in this moment, you know,
Yes.
like what needs to be revealed.
Yes.
And being a voice and not an echo, I think is the key part. I think in that is like when you're being yourself, you're speaking to the truth that is in your heart versus just repeating what other sounding boards or things that the world's, you know, like you said, what most of culture is saying is beauty or definition of influence or having power. All that can be redefined and renegotiated based on the truth you speak to it, you know?
Yeah. So that's how I see it. I want for younger people, developing minds, to be able to see this girl that has roles walk up in the studio and own that shit. Right. To look at her, to be able to look at yourself in the mirror in this sports bra, walking in with all the confidence in the world that you are here to be with your body. And you are here to have a relationship and develop the relationship with your body, despite what anybody else has to say about it. Because this is about you and your mat. This is about you and being able to sit with your energy and learning how to be present with your entire ecosystem of your body and your mind and your spirit. That is what I want to teach these younger minds that are constantly told what they're not, right? And I see this like slowly starting to develop, right? Like I was out in Orlando with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen since 2018. He moved out of Seattle and is now living in Atlanta. And he told me our flights got delayed, so I didn't get home until like 3:00 this morning. And we were sitting at the bar because his flight left later, and we were just drinking. And he was like, you know, Ingrid, I just want to say, you know, like you obviously have always been you, but now there's just this entirely new version of you is just like so amazing to see. And I just want to say that I admire you so much and I look up to you so much because, you know, and he's gay. And I understand that part of that culture with gay men where it's also very fat phobic. And there's this idea that you have to be fit. And he's like, and right, that I have my little beer gut, and like by heterosexual standards, I'm not fat, but to the gays I'm fat. And and I just see you, and like you're just out here in your bikini, just not giving a fuck. And I was like, well, yeah, like why?
Yeah.
Why would I? Why would I? I'm here to have a good time. Like, the more that you sit here and you think about all the energy that you're spending on all these negative thoughts, like
Right.
you're limiting yourself from having a good fucking time.
And
so
the whole thing of like dance like no one's watching because they're not because they're looking at their phones. Like you can sit here and stress about, you can be just concerned about how you look in a space. It's like, nobody's looking at you, no one's thinking about you.
The reality is that no one really is. Like they're all stuck in their own thing. So the more that you can beat to your own drum and love that beat, the more that you allow other people to also beat to their own drum. And that when because I'm starting off, just doing content that is more of me, and it's about how to look at nature, and have different perspectives of things that you normally don't think about, right? Like your connection to the trees, the connection to your walk, right? That's really what my focus is. And in doing that, finding that influence, right? Like in hearing that from my friends, like you've inspired me to go to the gym in my sports bra and work out. Like that to me is huge, because I remember struggling so deeply, obsessed with gym culture, and like trying to go and being like, oh my gosh, I won't be able to look like that, or I won't be able to wear that until I look like that. Why?
Right.
Why are you limiting yourself? Why are you holding yourself back from having an experience? And that, when I started asking myself those questions, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, why am I doing that? It doesn't make sense. And the more that you can keep pushing that boundary just a little bit further, and that your threshold just a little bit further, you realize that the anxiety goes away. You didn't die, and you gained wisdom. And then you keep gaining more wisdom. And the next thing you know, you're in Las Vegas in a bikini, just like hitting on really handsome people and not giving a fuck.
All right, I'm sold. I don't want to limit my experiences either. I think I'm going to start wearing crop tops. I think you've done it, Ingrid. Yeah, me and my big bearded self, just kind of get a nice little crop top right here.
Go live in your truth, Micah.
I'm going to live in my truth. Yeah, get some long earrings, just like, that's
live your best
going
life.
To Vegas. Yeah, it sounds like a good time. You've never had a crop top experience, so it's probably needs to happen, huh?
Listen, and you know what though? What I have found is that you cannot fabricate genuineness, right? And so that energy that you provide by simply being yourself and walking into a room and hearing music also has been a big part of my salvation and my healing, because I've allowed myself permission to dance.
Yeah.
And just love the way that my body moves when it hears music, and appreciating that and honoring everything that happens when you dance. And the whole, you can't fake that, right? And people just will gravitate to that energy. So the more that you can just simply enjoy your life and enjoy that present moment, the more you attract other people that will vibe on that same wavelength, right? Of being present with you and enjoying that energy with you. And I have found that over the last year and a half, because I've allowed myself to do that, and I've given myself the opportunity to be open and remain open, I have met some absolutely incredible people. Because that energy, there's another book that I'm listening to about karma and karma yoga. And karma is basically, it's the Sanskrit word for action. And what all that entails.
Yeah.
And the action of being present and so many interesting things. Learning everything about yoga and all of the 8 limbs, and it's just so fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And I actually lost my train of thought about why I was talking about karma yoga. But it has something to do with action.
Yeah. Does it like ripple into the next? Like, is karma? Is it like somehow like the positions or things you do are like seeds you're planting for future? Like, I don't know. When I think of karma, that's what I'm thinking about. It's like the whole like kind of what you comes or goes around, comes around. Like what you sow, you shall reap. I don't know.
Yeah, and he talks about that in the book, about that misconception of like what, like a very watered down version is, I guess, that.
Yeah. Right.
But there's so much more complexities. Oh, yes. So in this book, he talks about like odor. And it's like not odor, like an actual odor, right? But when you walk into a room, like, yo, this energy is like weird. Like that, like, I don't know, something's weird about this. The vibe in here, the vibe is off, right? Mm-hmm. Like that odor that we exude when we walk into places, or that we naturally have, right? When you see a person that's genuine and that's happy, or that is free, that lightness, you can see that, like their cheekbones are lighter, like their faces are softer, like it's just a little bit more airy. And you can see somebody that's fully going through a hard time, a depression, or that is very stressed out. Like you can see that in their energy, how they approach conversations, like how the vibe, and that is what he talks about is, like your odor, right? Like how strong is that odor, right? That energetic odor, because you accumulate all this karma. You either accumulate good karma or you accumulate bad karma, right? And all of that, what that entails, right? Like when you do a bad deed, and like you're the person on the receiving end, right? Like you don't accumulate good or bad karma, right? Like, but that other person does accumulate bad karma, and that continues just to build, right? And that just kind of encompasses all the energy that you're carrying around, and how you are perceived in the world, and how you carry yourself in the world, and the emotional and energetic weight that now you have, right? That you're going to keep passing on, that you pass on to your next generation, like that. That is what you're passing on. And so unfortunately I had a lot of bad karma inside of my body, right? Like dealing with all of the things that my parents carried and experienced, and what their parents experienced, and what they brought onto me, right? And knowing and understanding this wasn't mine, but it's in me. So now I have to release it. When I heal myself, I heal my Father. When I can forgive myself for how I speak to myself, I forgive my Father, because these words were spoken to him. These words were spoken to my mom, right? These feelings of abandonment were felt by my mom. So this is my mother's energy inside of me that I am releasing. When I release this out of myself, I release this out of my mother. I heal all of those generations behind me. That's why I have these butterflies on my arm. These are the 5 generations of monarch butterflies that are my ancestors. Because I am undocumented, I don't belong here and I don't belong there, but I fluctuate between both, and I identify with both to a certain extent,
sure.
Right? And so the migration pattern of that, and just all these generations of mothers that have come before me to make me, I think is just phenomenal. When you think about life in that way, it's phenomenal that you exist, because all of these aunts, uncles, aunties, friends, all these situations had to happen in the precise moment that they happened. Otherwise, you might have green eyes.
Right.
You might not be a ginger, right? You might have been a blonde. Who knows? Right? Like, but all of them had to happen in order to create you.
Millions and millions of years. Whole lineage of genetics and everything.
It's a miracle.
Yeah,
like you're a
really
walking
is.
miracle. And then imagine now adding the gratitude of breath.
That's beautiful what you're sharing about. Yeah, thanks for that perspective of just when we do that inner healing, it's not just for our healing, and it's hard to like let go of that hurt and anger towards, like, even when you're sharing about your dad, I naturally just like want to get angry and like, oh, that's the kind of person I'd love to just beat the shit out of,
Yeah.
But that's how you keep cycles of pain and hurt in the world, by holding that anger towards that person. And even though he's gone, I think it was beautiful that you framed it as like a way of it active, like it is a process of actually him healing himself when you heal yourself.
Yeah. Shrooms have also helped.
Yeah. Hey, now you're speaking my love language, my second love language.
Yes. Psychedelics have also been a huge part of my healing. And I want to be very open in talking about that too, because coming from a place of depression, like you already don't trust yourself. You don't trust your mental capacity to process things, or like you're scared, or you have locked so many of those things in a vessel that you don't touch because it's so painful and you're scared of what could come up. And that was me for a very long time. And I started, therapy and my amazing therapist that I had out in Washington. And I decided one day, my ex-partner actually had brought up psychedelics and shrooms. And I was like, no, I'm too scared to do any of that. Like, absolutely not. Like, but the heartbreak of that relationship ending and the reality that was a possibility was when I also dug really deep into Buddhism. Because Buddhism also teaches you that you should not hold on to things, right? Because the moment that you begin to hold on to things, that is when suffering begins, right? When you think that you're entitled to anything, a person, a place, a car, whatever, like you open up that door to be disappointed. You open up that door to feel suffering and pain when you try to hold on to things. When you're born, you're not born with anything. The only thing that you are responsible for are your breath and your actions. Exactly. You get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that caused me
that's what we're leaving with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yes. And that is what led me to want to do LSD first, actually, because I went through a really hard time accepting that it was over. And this is when I started to hear my dad back there, and like that hardwire of, you're right. My dad was right. Like, nobody's going to want me. Like, I did everything that I could to try to keep this person in my life, and he didn't want me. Like he basically cheated on me and like left me. And wow, like all the things that I had done, and that wasn't enough. I was not enough for him. I wasn't the right partner. Like, and that started to really like mess with me, like, oh, because you don't look like her. Right. And it's crazy because you think about it later, right? And you're like, oh gosh, like first I wasn't skinny enough and now I'm not fat enough. Like, you start to, compare yourself in other ways. Yeah. Right. And so that really started to mess with me. And I had to really work on that. Like, that person didn't belong to you. And and I had to keep that practice, right? Because I never envisioned it being over. Like, that didn't even cross my mind, right? And so now all of a sudden I have to deal with the reality where the life that I envisioned, right, no longer existed for me. And now I had to figure out how to find Ingrid again by myself. Like, it was no longer you and I. It was like, okay, now you're by yourself. Again, felt like I was a widow. And, where was I going with this?
We were talking about psychedelics.
Oh,
yes. We were talking about.
So now I'm going through this like heartbreak, and I'm not particularly so fond of myself right now, because now I'm starting to think about all of those thoughts that were the memories of my childhood, and me not wanting to take pictures, and me thinking that I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't white. I wasn't blonde. I wasn't this. And that caused me to be left. Like, I wasn't worthy. He left me for somebody that was white and blonde hair and blue eyes. My dad was right. I'm not worth shit. Like, we were going to get married, and that's what he left me for, because I'm not shit. My dad was right. And
this came up during your acid trip, you're saying?
This was like leading up to it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So now I come to Kansas City, and this magical opportunity presents itself. Again, I think this is source, right? Mm-hmm. And the opportunity comes up for me to do LSD. And I have the most amazing experience. I set out my journal. I have a candle. I'm about to meditate. And I start to feel all of these amazing experiences of just love. And I didn't grow up with love in my life. And so now all of a sudden I'm looking at myself in this mirror and I legitimately can't think of one bad thing to say about myself. And I'm crying, you know, and I have all this smile on my face and I'm just crying and I'm seeing myself in love for the first time. Not thinking about the words that my dad would say about me not looking a certain way, but of me just appreciating myself and sitting with that, what love feels like. And I said, oh my gosh, I love this.
I love love.
Yeah. Yes. And I just felt I was in love with everything. Like I got to just get out of that mindset of sadness that I just knew how to be in so well because of how long I have been suffering, that I knew how to function in it. And then I proceeded to try shrooms next. So a couple months passed and I was like, okay, like I'm ready for the next step of healing because this was great. But now I feel like I got to take care of some shit.
Right.
And it's just evolved. And yeah, shrooms have allowed me to have conversations with my dad and to sit with that and really feel my dad's plea to forgive him. Like I spiritually felt that. I felt my father's energy. I've dreamt with my father. I see myself as a spiritual being, and so I feel connected, particularly through my dreams. And he's come to me, and especially after the passing of that partner, I was not in good shape at all. I mean, I was suicidal myself. And he would come to me in my dreams and would apologize, and we had those discussions. And, you know, and even when I was tripping, you know, I could feel that. I could feel his energy. I could feel him telling me, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was doing. And because now I can see it through those eyes, because he's no longer here, I can take a look back at his childhood and understand the choices and decisions that he made because of the violence that he endured as a child. And, you know, and so being able to look at it through those lenses has allowed me to process and move forward with my life, where I don't sit with the feeling of what that felt like anymore. And so it's psychedelics are an amazing medicine.
Yeah, I've heard it described as like, you know, over years, our brain creates, you know, like ruts in the snow, just over and over again, neurological pathways of how we think or process and how we, and that's why meditation, all these different practices are creating new neural pathways in your brain. You're literally rewriting the chemistry in your brain. But what psychedelics affords an opportunity is like kind of like releasing a fresh snowfall on those ruts. So like they're still there, like, and that's why you'll still like face some shit. But it gives you the potential to kind of make little shifts, you know, to kind of jump rivets, little divots in the snow to like have a new fresh snowfall in your brain to kind of like, okay, I see a different perspective of that. I've also experienced the same thing where like I've heard people do not look in mirrors. It is like you will get fucked up. You know, like I had my brother share one time where he looked in a mirror on I can't remember which it was, shrooms or acid, and he had like messed with the head. He felt like he had he was stuck in the mirror, like he had reversed places, like he suddenly took on the shift perspective.
Yes.
And he panicked. It was like he thought he was stuck in the mirror.
Oh my goodness.
But I had the experience like what you had, where I looked at myself and I was like really surprised. I was like, shit, like you're a good looking dude, Micah. Like, what am I so worried about? Like just that self-image, the fear of like facing, and you're like, oh, actually, this isn't so bad at all. Like you're actually a cool guy.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I like that smile on your face. Yeah.
Yes.
You're doing all right, Micah.
Yes, exactly that. That's exactly the feeling. Like, You get it. That's like you just can't be unkind to yourself. Like it just doesn't exist. Like that voice it doesn't exist. And it allows you the space to know what that experience is like, especially if you have been struggling with years of self-abuse. You don't know any other voice but that one. And this medicine offers you the opportunity to know what it's like to not have that. So that when you come out of it, you're like, now I know what it's like to be kind to myself. Now I know what it's like to see myself through this lens. How can I chase that more in my waking days? And then you fall in love with nature, and then you see that you're also a part of nature, right? And this is what shrooms do, right? Like they get you in touch with your nature, with your true nature, right? Because Buddhism is just fucking great, like, because it allows you to see what is true. Like you were made of all of the elements of the earth. So why do you not function in the same way that nature does in the present moment? Right? Why? And that's, you know, the blessing and the curse of being a conscious being. Right? Is that you have to battle with that. Like how to just let the thought come in and like come out. Right? Because everything that exists does have some level of consciousness. We just have a lot more. Right? So we have a lot more things to deal with. Some are good. It built our societies that we live in. Right? It afforded us the ability to live in warmth. Right? Extended our lifeline. Right? Because now we can live up to 70, 80 years old. We used to be dead by the age of 30. Right? So it's allowed us to evolve, but now we're also dealing with a huge mental crisis issue right now. And the pandemic opened up that reality of loneliness and how lonely we are and how scared we are to be with ourselves.
Yes.
How terrified, because we're stuck in our screens. Like to be in silence, people start getting a lot of anxiety or freaking out, right? And now they have all these sudden rushes of thoughts because you don't know how to be with yourself. You don't know how to be alone. You don't know how to be in quiet. And the kids that are growing up these days, like, I mean, I see my niece and my nephew, like I remember being a little kid with my little brother and going outside and literally just looking up at the clouds and, oh, what does that look like? Oh, what does this look like? And now kids just can't stay still. Right? Because our attention spans are just like, we're not, there's a podcast episode on NPR, because I'm a big NPR head. And she talks about this, you know, like how there's not enough space to just be bored. We're constantly looking to be engaged.
Right.
And I mean, companies, like I come from tech, right? And we're constantly trying to figure out how to keep people engaged, how to keep them on the platform, how to keep them buying, how to keep, you know, the scarcity of not having something, right? Capitalism, right? Like how can we keep people buying stuff, right? How can we trick the algorithm to like post things, your product on there, right? But we don't know how to be bored.
Right.
We don't know how to just sit. And that is a true practice too. Like I go outside sometimes and I just sit. And I sit and I ponder on the beauty of the different worlds that exist, the cars that are driving on the road, the tree that is swaying, like hearing the kids play, like all of that. And just being able to sit with the present moment so that you can enjoy the laugh. You can enjoy the coffee with that friend because you're actively present. You're not thinking about a future. You're not thinking about a past. You're being in your nature, present.
Yeah, it's amazing how much capitalism has influenced our everyday living in the sense of like we talk about our personal time, our lives of like we weigh it as like, was I having a productive day or less productive day? And literally the idea of production to produce. And like we're just kind of taught to feel guilty, like even on vacations or this or that. Like, you know, I've had to like be very clear with bosses that like, when I'm taking off, I'm taking off. Like I will not answer my email. I will not. And some of them I've had, you know, like, well, I'm going on a trip, but if you need me, you can reach it, you know. And I'm like, I'm not opening that door. I'm letting you know, like, I am like cutting it out because, yeah, like there's just something of our culture that wants us to feel guilty for just, like you're saying, enjoying the mundane, to like really rest in the absence of, and like in my mind, I've just, even when I am taking off work, I still have the habit of like, well, I should edit an episode of the podcast. I should write a chapter in a book, and I should like keep, utilize my time. And it's really hard. It's really hard to not just be like, just exist here, Micah. Just like here, you can take a minute and just enjoy the sunset, So it's a struggle, but yeah, I think part of it's just trying to disassociate and disentangle ourselves from just, the living of, and the verbiage of production, being productive and utilizing my time most efficiently. Efficiency, another word, capitalistic world.
Yes.
Let's be the most efficient with our time and our vacation time. Ingrid, thanks for being here. It's been a really pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your heart and your journey and all the good stuff you're about. It's been a real honor and privilege to have you here.
Thank you, Micah.
And just for being so open and sharing your story with your father, and just, it's heavy stuff, and just, I know that someone needed to hear that. So thank you for sharing that with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that I try to also be very mindful of, is that it does matter, right? Like, my story matters. And in the childhood that I had, and that's what I'm actively working on now in therapy. Like, a lot of people will see me like, oh my gosh, like, you're such a confident person, and oh my gosh, like, I just love the way that you enter a room, and right? But there's so much still that needs to be healed, right? Like, you're never fully healed. And initially when I heard that, I was so hurt, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm always going to be working on this. Like, I'm always, and
Be on my deathbed, and I forgave the last person. I did it, finally. I'm seconds from death. I finally forgave this last person on my list of...
Man, yeah.
I forgave myself, whatever the thing is.
Yes. And I was like, oh gosh, like, I'm always going to be feeling this way, or like, I'm constantly... And that's honestly like the beautiful thing about being human, right? Is knowing that there is something always that's going to pop up, but it no longer gets to stay, right? Like, it doesn't sit with you, or it doesn't cripple you anymore, right? Like, you now have the tools to process that. And that's what I'm trying to do with my book, is give people the tools that have helped me to get a little bit further into that path of enlightenment, right? Where you're not so stuck on that comment that somebody made on your post that made you feel bad, where you can have a good relationship with your mind, with your spirit, because now you're just so connected to your body and your reactions that you can control them, because that is what's going to build the future that you want to have. And that's the approach that I'm having now with myself, and acknowledging too what is true and what has happened, right? Because I was raised to just downplay everything, right? Downplay my sadness. No seas chillona, like, don't be a crybaby, right? Or like, it's not that bad. And recognizing that actually, like, I have to honor what was true, so that I can honor myself and honor what is to come, right? And so that's one of the big things that I want to do with my life, because, like, these experiences, as unfortunate as they are, they have allowed me to help other people feel understood. And unfortunately, I had to, be very alone in that process and finding those resources. But because I have found them, now I serve as that resource for other people. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that I'm here. That I have come down from the spirit world and embodied this, like, my life force has come into this body with the genes that it has come with the experience of the family and the genes from those generations, to find that lesson of letting go, of self-love, of enlightenment, and give that and experience that in this lifetime. So that's my hope, is that I can slowly progress into, doing it as long as I can, with as many people as can be touched by it, because it is actually something that a lot of people have in common with me. Being sad, and not being able to talk about it, or having an abusive relationship, domestic violence, growing up undocumented, having a dream and being told that it's kind of impossible and doing it anyway. And that's the path that I'm on right now. I quit my corporate job at Amazon, and now I'm on my own, figuring out how to be successful, doing something that actually is my passion, right? Which is being creative and just speaking to my life experience and figuring out how to touch people with it.
Absolutely. And may your journey towards that creative voice, let it be fruitful and let it, come into its own. Yeah. You're fucking doing it. Yeah, Ingrid. Yeah. Just keep doing what you're doing, living into it. So speaking of this life and the things going on, do you have any exciting, events or things you'd like to share with folks of upcoming opportunities where folks can participate in yoga or,
So right now, the last event, so I have a meditation coming up on Wednesday of this week. And then on Sunday, the 29th, I'm having a 420 yoga. Oh. So anybody that is into the cannabis, I am going to be doing a flow with cannabis.
Oh, cool.
Cannabis has a really amazing effect on the body, because it just lets you really be in your body a little bit deeper. So we're going to be flowing at a park, and then we're going to be meditating a little bit, and then we're going to journal about that experience of being in the body. As for yoga, after that, I'm actually going to take a small break from teaching so that I can be more of a student and be more in the practice for myself. And this is another big thing, about just knowing yourself and knowing when to provide medicine, and what that looks like for me. And I need to take some of that for myself and be with that. And so, and just pushing the book is another thing that I'm going to be doing a lot more on. I am very excited though, because I am going to start doing Instagram lives every week. So the May, I'm going to just start popping in on lives. I haven't decided the day or what time I'm going to do that, but I hope to have a nice little fancy setup like you have here.
Oh. Tommy Studios.
Yes.
Good. That's how fancy we get. Go to my friend Tommy's basement. No, that's cool though. Go ahead and throw out your Instagram real quick.
So it is it's its_Ingrid the letter B. It's Ingrid B. So find me on Instagram. You can also check out my website. There's a couple of free resources on there on self-compassion and on being able to sift through negative, distorted thoughts. So understanding your feelings. So that is a free resource downloadable for anybody that's interested. The book is also on sale, so they can download the book if that's something that they want to explore too. And I'm revamping it, so there's going to be a couple of journal exercises that you'll be able to use as journal prompts to help start to open up some of those, open up some of that I don't know what you would call it.
All that juicy goodness.
Yeah.
Just get it all out.
Yeah, to get it out. Let it surface and let it go.
Let all the good and bad come. Just bubble up.
Just let it come up and let it go. Yes, like that is really the purpose of the book, is to how you can take those small little steps in your daily life to remain open, to use very practical tools. Like I talked a little bit about primordial sounds and very realistic, small things that you can do in your day-to-day that are mindfulness practices that will help you start to reconnect with your body and reconnect with nature. Because once you can reconnect with nature, you connect with yourself again. And so the book is really talking to that, how to come back to yourself, how to not think of yourself outside of your body, not think of yourself outside of your mind, but all of them work together to exist. So those are some of the things that I'm doing. So catch me on Instagram Live every week, where I'm going to be just talking about different topics based off of my experience and things that have come down from a download and a meditation about life, or grief, depression, coming and talking maybe down to like all of the distorted thoughts and being able to categorize them, because I'm sure that you probably know that, but all of your distorted thoughts, once you can label the experience, you can now process it and release it. So when you think about PTSD, or you think about something that's causing you pain, you just feel it, but because you haven't labeled it, you can't release it. So once you can label it, you now understand what you need to do in order to let it go. Right? So this book is giving you that opportunity to label it so that you can process it and let it go.
It's beautiful. And I hope that to all our listeners today, you found some kind of piece of this conversation that's illuminating to help you find your own inner healing, practice mindfulness, so that your breathing days could be meaningful for you.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in for Pray for Micah podcast. Make sure you smash that like, get that bell, do the things, and please write reviews. That always helps get the show promoted and out there. And you can always follow Pray for Micah Pod on all your socials as well. Until next time. Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And check out my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We'll see you next time.
You are now re-entering the normal world.